In 1977, Winnett discovered 2 locked, single diplomatic packs containing documents in his bureau and a pouch labeled Croce 12 report. He took these materials to draft a report and prepare analyses, which apparently turned out to be classified. The report was scheduled for the following week, and during preliminary review, it was observed by 2 senior officials. Within a few days in July, Winnett had been briefed by the authorities responsible for the project, which involved investigating incidents linked to unidentified phenomena. Winnett had previously been unfamiliar with the UFO-related phenomena. He learned that a team from the Special Forces had gone to receive a case reportedly related to a UFO, but the exact circumstances of the event were classified. Winnett described his involvement in the mid-1980s, noting that the Air Force maintained relocation and debriefing protocols for personnel exposed to sensitive incidents. He explained that such measures were followed for the remainder of their careers, and although some information remained classified, it was intended to protect operational security. Winnett reported that the U.S. government had, at one point, captured an extraterrestrial entity. One being was reportedly still alive in captivity. He referenced public and classified reports, noting that Project Stigma and related investigations documented these occurrences. According to available accounts, some materials regarding these incidents had been publicly released in publications like the Tucson Weekly News, although many details remained heavily redacted. Winnett described the condition of mutilated human and animal remains related to some investigations, emphasizing that certain anomalies defied conventional explanation. He detailed specific observations regarding autopsies and forensic procedures, including how tissue degradation sometimes reduced samples to powder. The Grudge 12 and 13 documents, which Winnett reviewed, contained extensive reports spanning from the 1950s through the 1960s, documenting UFO sightings and related military responses. Project Blue Book and other classified investigations recorded patterns, analyses, and follow-ups on unidentified aerial phenomena, some of which included alleged alien technology and biological specimens. Winnett indicated that official memoranda and reports were carefully archived, with restricted access and multiple levels of security classification. Following his government service, Winnett continued his own research, consulting documents and reports to supplement publicly available information. He noted that while some rumors and speculative accounts circulated, his documentation was grounded in official records and verifiable sources. Winnett emphasized that while certain findings were sensational, his approach prioritized accuracy and evidence-based reporting. In summary, Winnett's work involved reviewing, analyzing, and reporting on highly sensitive incidents related to UFO phenomena, some of which included potential extraterrestrial encounters. His reports contributed to both classified and declassified records, offering insight into the U.S. government's investigation and management of unusual aerial and biological events over several decades. On August 19, 1987, Gary Stolman walked into KNEC Channel 4 television studio. His father, Max Stolman, was a reporter for the station. The following day, newspapers reported, Burbank, California. UPI, a man who talked his way into a television studio brandished what appeared to be a handgun during a live newscast Wednesday and forced consumer reporter David Horowitz to read a rambling statement about space creatures and the CIA. Horowitz never read the statement on air. The station cut to a commercial. When Gary handed over his BB gun, he was taken into custody. NBC released the statement 24 hours later. Gary's statement makes extraordinary claims about clones, extraterrestrials, and CIA conspiracies. He alleges that the man who appeared on KNBC for 3 years as his father is actually a clone created by the CIA and alien forces. This is part of a larger plot to overthrow the US government and possibly endanger humanity. He claims the CIA has tried to destroy his family and friends, and that he has been forced into CIA-run mental hospitals where he was surveilled and interviewed without consent. Gary attempted multiple times to obtain records and legal assistance, including from Ben Taub Hospital in Cincinnati, but reports were either withheld, missing, or blocked. He also described a warning from the CIA in 1981 to avoid computers, as they could be used for surveillance and manipulation. Gary calls for a congressional investigation and federal protection for his family. He references a radio interview with a former CIA official describing alleged secret operations, including disease experiments, assassination plots, and UFO cover-ups. He mentions Hangar 18 at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, now the Environmental Control Building, as a site containing advanced extraterrestrial technology unknown even to Congress. Gary describes encounters with people with altered personalities and secret organizations potentially linked to the president's staff. Attempts to contact Gary's lawyer were unsuccessful. The lawyer reportedly vanished after discussions. John Lear, a highly experienced airline pilot, released a statement corroborating some UFO concerns on December 29, 1987. Lear has flown 160 aircraft types in 50 countries and holds 17 world speed records in the Learjet. He has conducted missions for the CIA and other government agencies. Lear became interested in UFOs after hearing about UFO landings at Bentwaters AFB near London, England, including sightings of small aliens by Air Force personnel. He asserts that the US government has been in contact with extraterrestrials for about 20 years, and that the suppression of this information relies on the public's gullibility and trust in authorities. Lear's note to the press emphasizes that these truths are dangerous and historically controversial, citing the execution of Giordano Bruno in 1600 for proposing that the Earth is not the center of the universe. That was in the 1800s. Now, about 400 years after the first truth was revealed, we must once again face the shocking facts, the horrible truth that the government has been hiding from us for over 40 years. Unfortunately, this truth is far more horrifying than the government ever imagined. In its effort to protect democracy, our government essentially sold us to the aliens. Here's how it happened. Germany may have recovered a flying saucer as early as 1939, and General James H. Doolittle went to Norway in 1952 to inspect a flying saucer that had crashed in Spitsbergen. The horrible truth was known only to a very few people. These beings were ugly creatures, shaped like praying mantises, and they were perhaps a billion years more advanced than us. Of those first to learn this truth, several committed suicide, the most prominent being Defense Secretary James V. Forrestal, who jumped from a 16th-story hospital window. His medical records remain sealed to this day. President Truman quickly imposed a lid on the secret, and the general public still thinks flying saucers are a joke. But in 1947, Truman established a group of 12 of the top military and scientific personnel, known as MJ-12. While the group exists today, none of the original members are still alive. The last, Gordon Gray, former Secretary of the Army, died in 1984. As each member passed away, MJ-12 appointed a successor. Some speculate that the group expanded over time. Several saucer crashes occurred in the late 1920s and 1940s, in Roswell, New Mexico, Aztec, New Mexico, and near Laredo, Texas. At the time, the US government considered itself the most powerful nation on Earth, having recently developed the atomic bomb and jet aircraft that could exceed the speed of sound. But the arrival of these alien craft, powered in ways our engineers could not comprehend, with no familiar components, cylinders, pistons, or turbines, left our leaders helpless. The government saw the need for a total cover-up, including the use of deadly force. In July 1952, flying saucers flew over Washington, D.C., buzzing the White House, the Capitol, and the Pentagon. The government did everything it could to erase the incident from public memory. Thousands of sightings occurred during the Korean War, with some saucers stored at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and other nearby facilities. One crashed saucer was so enormous that logistical problems forced it to remain at the crash site. On April 30, 1964, the first official communication between aliens and the U.S. government took place at Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico, where 3 saucers landed. During 1969 to 1971, MJ-12 negotiated a deal with the aliens, known as EBEs, extraterrestrial biological entities. In exchange for technology, the government agreed to ignore certain abductions and suppress information about them. However, by 1979 to 1983, it became clear that things were not going as planned. Thousands more people were being abducted than officially reported. Some missing children were used for experiments and other purposes required by the aliens. In 1979, a Special Armed Forces unit attempted to intervene at the Dulce laboratory, but 66 soldiers were killed, and the hostages were not rescued. To manage public perception, MJ-12 promoted films like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T., portraying aliens as benevolent. This bargain for technology was installed in underground facilities but could only be operated by the EBEs themselves. Several documentaries and video recordings were made under a strict plan to gradually reveal the presence of aliens on Earth. William Moore, a researcher in Simi Valley, California, documented the Roswell incident and interviews with military personnel associated with MJ-12, including details about recovered flying saucers and live aliens designated EBE-1, EBE-2, and EBE-3, held at facilities like Los Alamos, New Mexico, and Edwards Air Force Base, California. The EBEs claim to have created Christ and possess recording devices that capture all of Earth's history, displaying it as holograms. They communicate telepathically, with an Air Force colonel acting as interpreter. MJ-12 members, including figures like Dr. Edward Teller and Dr. Henry Kissinger, continue to manage the secrecy, developing technology under the guise of defense initiatives such as SDI. The Grand Deception maintains control over public perception, while the truth about alien interaction and abductions remains largely hidden. Just before the recent stock market correction in October 1987, several journalists, including Bill Moore, were invited to Washington, D.C., to personally film an EBE in a series of interviews and later describe the footage to the public. However, due to the market turmoil, the timing was deemed inopportune. While this may seem like an unusual way to inform the public about extraterrestrials, it aligns with the actions of a panicked organization unsure of how to proceed. The NSA had a project called Aquarius, specifically dealing with communications with aliens, the EBEs. Within Aquarius was Project Snowbird, a program focused on recovering alien aircraft at Groom Lake, Nevada, a program that continues today. An individual working at Groom Lake reportedly said, "Our people are much better at taking things apart than putting them back together." Moore claims to have a contact within MJ-12, and he believes he has been given selective documents and leads, with the promise that some information about extraterrestrials would be made public by the end of 1987. Some speculate, however, that Moore may actually be acting as a conduit for MJ-12, providing evidence of extraterrestrials while suppressing the truths about abductions and mutilations. Moore himself insists he is not a government agent, though evidence suggests he has been involved in the distribution of sensitive material. Moore also claims that the widely publicized cattle mutilations from 1973 to 1983 were a hoax orchestrated by Linda Howe to generate publicity, citing the book Mute Evidence as evidence. However, this book was allegedly government-sponsored to explain the incidents in conventional terms. Moore possesses additional documents from Project Aquarius, some of which leaked years ago, detailing a highly secret NSA program that had previously been denied. According to Moore, a U.S. Air Force Academy physics textbook, Introductory Space Science, included a chapter on unidentified flying objects, describing commonly seen alien types, including the EBEs. The chapter was reportedly removed to suppress information. With rising evidence such as the October and November 1987 sightings in Whiteville, Virginia, and recent publications like Night Siege, MJ-12 may have felt compelled to acknowledge EBEs while still concealing the truth about abductions and mutilations. From MJ-12's perspective, releasing selective information through Moore could support public belief in extraterrestrials without revealing the full scope of their operations. If Moore acts alone, he might be unaware of the Grand Deception. Time will reveal whether he releases the promised video interviews or delays them to accommodate MJ-12's plans. The mainstream media would not report these events directly. Journalists like Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, and Sam Donaldson primarily relay news from agencies like AP and UPI rather than conducting independent investigations. Even in cases of thousands of eyewitnesses, like the Whiteville sightings, local reporters and media outlets failed to cover the events, sometimes redirected under false pretenses, such as NASA weather surveys. As for prominent scientists, Carl Sagan, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, there is little public acknowledgement of the cover-up. Sagan's Planetary Society and the Arecibo Observatory are framed as searches for extraterrestrial intelligence, but the evidence suggests a large-scale suppression of information. Clarke, known for his accurate scientific fiction, estimated that contact with extraterrestrials would not occur before the 21st century. The larger question remains, are the EBEs preparing for a return to their home, or is Earth already effectively under their control? Given the scale of abductions, secret underground bases, Groom Lake, Sumter, Roswell, Pytown, New Mexico, among others, and their covert presence, it seems the invasion may already be complete. A well-planned operation by a civilization thousands of years more advanced than us would likely unfold without immediate mass confrontations or obvious displays of force. In June 1983, following the discovery of the Grand Deception, MJ-12 began developing a containment device for EBEs, funded under SDI, which coincidentally began around the same time. This project failed in December 1987, and a new program is expected to take decades to complete. Meanwhile, MJ-12 is desperate to prevent anyone, including Congress, the Senate, or the public, from learning the true extent of the UFO cover-up and the resulting disaster. Moore never released the promised videotapes but claimed to be negotiating with a major network for a future release. The public is expected to receive the information through controlled channels, making Moore's credibility essential while cushioning the impact of disclosure. Historically, in September 1947, a civilian pilot observed a disc-shaped aircraft flying over the Cascade Mountains in Washington, traveling at high speed. Hundreds of similar reports followed, sparking independent investigations by military and civilian agencies. A rancher later reported finding 4 small humanoid bodies near the crash site, which had decomposed after roughly a week of exposure. Scientific teams removed the bodies and the craft to multiple locations, and witnesses were misled with a cover story labeling the object as a downed weather balloon. The analysis concluded that although these beings were humanoid in appearance, their biological and evolutionary processes differed greatly from humans. Dr. Bronk's team suggested the term extraterrestrial biological entities, EBAs, as a standard reference for these creatures until a more definitive designation could be assigned. Since the craft clearly did not originate on Earth, speculation arose about their point of origin, possibly another solar system. Numerous examples of writing-like symbols were found within the wreckage. Efforts to decipher these artifacts have largely been unsuccessful. Similarly, attempts to determine the method of propulsion or the nature of the power source have also failed. Research in this area is complicated by the complete absence of identifiable wings, propellers, jets, or any conventional means of propulsion and guidance, as well as the lack of vacuum tubes or other recognizable electronic components. It is assumed that the propulsion unit was completely destroyed in the explosion that caused the crash. Due to the need for additional information on these craft, their performance characteristics, and their purpose, the U.S. Air Force initiated Project Sign in December 1947. To maintain security, liaison between Sign and Majestic 12 was limited to 2 individuals within the Intelligence Division of the Air Materiel Command, who were authorized to pass along only specific types of information through secure channels. Sign evolved into Project Grudge in December 1949. The operation is currently conducted under the code name Blue Book, with liaison maintained through the Air Force officer in charge of the project. On December 6, 1955, a second object, likely of similar origin, impacted the Earth at high speed in the French Indies area of the Texas-Mexican border after following a long trajectory through the atmosphere. By the time a recovery team arrived, most of the debris was almost entirely incinerated. Recoverable material was transported to the Air Force facility at Sandia, New Mexico, for study. The potential implications for national security remain significant, as the motives and ultimate intentions of these visitors are still completely unknown. Additionally, a notable increase in surveillance activity of these crafts since May, continuing through the autumn, has raised concerns that further developments may be imminent. For these reasons, as well as international and technological considerations and the need to prevent public panic, the Majestic 12 group maintains that the strictest security precautions should continue under the new administration. Under the 1974 amendments, federal courts may review claims of national security to ensure they are not being used to suppress material that is politically embarrassing but not genuinely sensitive. For example, classifying a few pages does not justify keeping an entire document secret. In 1984, the government added an exemption to the Freedom of Information Act allowing the Department of Defense to withhold technical data with military or space application. Other exemptions include documents related solely to internal agency personnel rules or practices that do not affect the public, materials kept confidential by federal law such as income tax returns or patent applications, trade secrets or commercial/financial information submitted confidentially, inter- or intra-agency communications expressing officials' views or recommendations on policy or legal matters, which does not apply to reports or analyses, personnel or medical files protected under the Privacy Act, investigatory files that could interfere with law enforcement, deny a fair trial, invade personal privacy, reveal a confidential source, disclose investigative techniques, or endanger law enforcement personnel, reports by agencies supervising financial institutions, and geological and geophysical data, including maps, related to oil or natural gas exploration by private firms. Observations show that UFO sightings are often concentrated in areas of high geomagnetic or gravitational anomalies, frequently linked to so-called dimensional windows. Suspected inner Earth entrances and possible UFO bases have also been noted, along with cattle mutilation sites. Entities are classified by density, which reflects their level of awareness, consciousness, and ability to manipulate space, time, matter, and energy. These attributes also determine their interactions with humans. Density 1 entities are not aware or minimally aware, such as minerals or plants. Density 2 entities are aware but not self-aware, including animals and lower primates. Density 3 entities are self-aware, humans being included, with awareness of 3 dimensions and basic telepathy. Density 4 entities possess advanced spiritual awareness, Christ consciousness, unconditional love, and are less dependent on physical bodies. They may use android or doll bodies, controlled through chakras, to interact with others of the same frequency. Density 5+ entities are fully conscious, capable of interacting outside the universe or creating universes. Entities using android or 4D bodies focus their awareness at a specific frequency, remaining invisible to humans unless intentionally interacting with them. The global energy grid, established thousands of years ago, is being restored. This network channels electrical flows and opens dimensional portals, reducing reliance on conventional spacecraft. Ancient pyramids, once aligned with the equator, functioned as critical linkage points. Reconstruction of the grid will allow artificial manipulation of Earth's axis to energize the network fully. Every 3,600 years, higher density beings are relocated by light beings as the galaxy passes through zones of varying vibrational energy. Since February 1988, Earth has been transitioning toward fourth density vibrations, which affect telepathy, behavior, and susceptibility to emotional or psychic disturbances. 3 primary races are known to interact with Earth, along with secondary allied groups. A key coalition, known as the Network, includes Zeta Reticulans, or Greys, who dedicate themselves to scientific research and life sciences. They conduct abductions for genetic studies and interbreeding, implant small monitoring devices in humans that resonate with brain waves to transmit information, and obtain subconscious consent from their subjects. Rig aliens are similar but on a different evolutionary timeline. They interact more with the US government and are associated with most cattle mutilations. Genetically damaged from ancient conflicts, they require human glandular substances to survive. Other network races are allied with these groups and participate in surveillance, technology acquisition, or influence over human populations. Human emotional states can attract attention from these entities. The key strategies for minimizing influence are projecting unconditional love and non-judgment, and monitoring where one's consent and attention lie, because subconscious agreement or focus on negative thoughts can enable interaction. For Zeta Reticulans, interference usually involves implants, monitoring, and genetic experiments. For Rig aliens, interference can include physical danger or manipulation via thought projection. Agencies such as the CIA and NSA have historically experimented with mind control, including psionics, radionics, and psychotronics, paralleling ancient Atlantean practices. The combination of human ethical and moral vulnerabilities and increasing fourth density influences creates susceptibilities, which can be mitigated by practicing unconditional love and awareness of attention and consent. Individuals are advised to take life one day at a time and focus on unconditional love and non-judgment. Maintaining control over attention and consent can reduce influence from higher density or extraterrestrial entities. These practices may halt or reduce unwanted interference, though effectiveness depends on the type of entity involved. Another race interacting with humanity is the Tall Blondes. Their origin is uncertain. They are likely Procyon, a positively oriented race from the 5th, 6th, and 7th densities, though there is a remote possibility they are Orionites, or Aryans, who are also tall and blonde but more massively built. Interaction with them appears limited. The Tall Blondes oppose the activities of the Grey Rigelians but will not intervene unless the Rigelians' actions threaten more than humanity itself. Efforts are underway to influence the Rigelians' behavior, but direct intervention is not currently feasible. There is also a race of short blondes with a whitish-blue skin tint, known as the Pleiadians, who are from the 5th, 6th, and 7th densities. They would potentially act against the Rigelians if requested by our government, but such intervention would be complicated and likely result in human casualties. Historically, it was suggested by J. Allen Hynek that understanding these phenomena might be linked to Theosophy, a study introduced by a society founded in New York on November 17, 1875. The goals of the Theosophical Society were to form a nucleus of universal brotherhood without distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or color, encourage the study of comparative religion, philosophy, and science, and investigate the unexplained laws of nature and latent human powers. Theosophy, coined by H. P. Blavatsky, includes foundational works such as Isis Unveiled, 1877, and The Secret Doctrine, which explores human origins, paraphysical beings, extraterrestrial visits, and the evolution of man. Contrary to conventional science, the evolution of man from apes is rejected in this framework. Early anthropoid species are traced to the third race of early Atlantis. Nature originally gave humans an ape-like external form around their astral prototype during evolutionary development. Some original Earth inhabitants, referred to as the boneless ones, had no material bodies. The first root race, the self-born, had no higher self or body. The second root race, the sweat-born, introduced intelligence asexually. The third root race, egg-born and androgynous, eventually separated into male and female sexes. Humanity's fifth race, in which we currently exist, is evolving toward interstellar ether. Historical accounts indicate major geological upheavals, including multiple glacial periods and deluges, with significant events occurring around 850,000, 200,000, and 19,900 years ago. Physical humanity has existed on Earth for roughly 18 million years, preceded by 300 million years of mineral and plant development. During this time, intellect and self-consciousness developed in incarnating entities. Ancient texts, particularly from India, reference dragons of light and wise serpents who descended to teach arts and sciences. The first 4 human races were color-coded. The first race yellow-white, the second gold, the third red, and the fourth brown/black. Evidence exists for 3-eyed giants, cyclopean races, and 4-armed humans with an additional third eye. Some non-terrestrial races arrived 900 million years ago, establishing early settlements such as Rainbow City in the South Pole, now buried beneath ice. Esoteric traditions describe the Elohim as 6th and 7th density beings responsible for introducing early human life to Earth and creating 1,746 nodes worldwide. These nodes entrained vibratory patterns between humans and the planet to guide consciousness. Over time, the network became disrupted, leaving only geological features and residual energy at the node sites. Evidence suggests efforts are ongoing to restore this planetary grid. The interaction of space-time, matter, and energy is governed by harmonic cycles of light, matter, and antimatter. When plus and minus fields interlock and alternate, a double cycle occurs, requiring both cycles to be accounted for in calculations. Adjusting the frequency between these cycles produces shifts in space-time. Gravity effects arise from high-frequency electromagnetic radiation, located between the lower infrared and radar bands, with wavelengths between approximately 0.3 and 4.3 millimeters. Planetary grid sites have been mapped globally, including locations such as the Egyptian Plateau, Western Russia, Lake Baikal, Bering Sea, Hudson Bay, North Atlantic, Scotland, the Himalayas, Iwo Jima, Hawaii, Baja California, Bahamas, Mid-Atlantic, Algeria, Sudan, Somalia, Chagos Archipelago, Sri Lanka, Gulf of Thailand, Sulawesi, Gulf of Carpentaria, the Marshall Islands, Phoenix Islands, Caroline Islands, Mid-South Pacific, Galapagos, Peru, the Amazon, Guiana Basin, Ascension, Gabon, South Africa, Indian Ocean, Wharton Basin, South Australia, Loyalty Islands, South Pacific, Easter Island, and others. These vile vortices are areas of magnetic and gravitational anomalies and may also serve as dimensional doorways. Plate pressures and cross pressures in these regions influence sites such as Pine Gap in Australia, known for U.S. operations. This site, along with nearby locations in China, has been associated with the launching of massive spacecraft and with experimental research. An atomic reaction based on U-235 occurred approximately 1.7 billion years ago. Geological surveys and spacecraft observations have revealed unusual geological structures at several key sites. Currently, 4 prime gravity focus points are identified at Alice Springs, Easter Island, Sligo, and Breckhaven, New York. Bell Helicopter Textron Incorporated has been involved in investigations into defense contracting. In 1988, it was reported that Bell and some employees obstructed a 34-year Justice Department fraud investigation by invoking the Fifth Amendment and refusing to cooperate. This obstruction created significant difficulties for investigators trying to determine responsibility for company operations and military contracts. Congressional inquiries revealed that Bell's documentation and production methods complicated efforts to assess government contract costs and quantities. On May 24, 1949, employees at a supersonic laboratory observed a metallic object reflecting sunlight. Viewed with the naked eye and later through binoculars, the object displayed no glare and appeared dirty. It moved horizontally at a gradually increasing speed and disappeared after 2.5 to 3 minutes without any visible means of propulsion. This case was documented under Project Blue Book. During World War II, Nazi engineers developed flying disc prototypes such as the Schreuer-Habermal disc, which reportedly reached a vertical height of 12 kilometers in 3.12 minutes and horizontal speeds of 2,000 kilometers per hour. Austrian inventor Victor Schauberger, also working with Nazi Germany, developed flying saucers using liquid vortex propulsion. Some of these craft were reported to fly, using water or air in a twisting oscillation to generate levitation. One model, destroyed at Leonstein, had a diameter of 1.5 meters, weighed 135 kilograms, and used a small electric motor and trout turbine for liftoff. Schauberger later worked on a top-secret U.S. government project in Texas before his death, repeatedly lamenting that all his work had been seized. Schauberger's early prototypes, developed between 1941 and 1942, exhibited unusual flight characteristics. The discs often featured retractable undercarriage legs terminating in inflatable rubber cushions and could accommodate a crew of 3. Energy accumulation in crystals follows a centripetal process, where amorphous, multidirectional energy coalesces into a single plane, transforming violet blue into yellow as energy stabilizes. Variations in gravitational attraction and radiation repulsion influence crystal formation and dimensional characteristics. The laws of gravitation and radiation must consider multidimensional interactions during crystallization. One of the most compelling cases in gravitational propulsion is the work of J.R. Searle in England. In 1949, as an electronic fitter with limited formal education, Searle discovered that spinning metal parts produced an electromotive force, EMF, with negative charges toward the exterior and positive toward the rotational axis. In 1950, experiments with rotating slip rings confirmed small EMFs and unusual physical effects, such as hair standing on end. Searle constructed a segmented rotor disk generator, energizing peripheral electromagnets to boost the EMF. By 1952, a 3-foot diameter prototype produced high voltage at low rotational speeds. Unexpectedly, the generator lifted itself approximately 50 feet off the ground, surrounded by a pink glow indicating ionized air at low pressure. The device eventually accelerated rapidly, suggesting the potential for near-limitless energy output. Subsequent craft based on Searle's designs, some up to 30 feet in diameter, have demonstrated similar performance. Once a threshold potential is reached, the energy output exceeds input, indicating virtually limitless power.